Welcome to Upper Pylon 2. Our mission is to provide you with an in-depth review of every episode of DS9 in the order they were broadcast. Tonight's episode is Dr. Bashir, I presume. And this is Matt in Buffalo.
And this is Matt from Arizona, and you are cleared for docking. Well, just like this episode was following a big two-parter episode, it's just me and Matt today after having all four of us on last week for By Inferno's Light, but that's okay because we're going to go right into our episode on Dr. Bashir, I presume, where we finally can put to rest our favorite game of, what the hell is it called again? Knowing Bashir's hiding it.
Knowing Bashir is genetically modified but hiding it, or something to that effect.
Yeah, that ends tonight. So I don't know what game you want to replace it with, listeners, but do let us know. Synopsis. Bashir becomes the model for the new long-term medical hologram, and we witness the end of an era, like we just said. This is the 16th episode of Season 5, first aired February 24th, 1997. Teleplay by Ronald D. Moore, story by Jimmy Diggs, and it was directed by David Livingston. Guest stars this week include Brian George as Richard Bashir, Max Grodenchik as Ram, Chase Masterson as Lita, Fadwa El Guindi as Amshad Bashir, J. Patrick McCormick as Bennett, and Robert Picardo, the doctor from Voyager, as Lewis Zimmerman and the Emergency Medical Holographic Program. So since it's just the two of us tonight, Matt has the notes for this episode. So whenever you're ready, Matt, take us into Dr. Bashir, I presume.
Before I do that, I want to ask the listeners, did Matt say teleplay by Ronald D. Moore? Because I'm pretty sure you did, believe it or not.
No, I think I said Moore.
I don't know. I think you might have slipped up and called Moore in there. But anyhow.
That would be appropriate.
Insert the replay here. Anyhow, teaser. We open to Fun and Games in Quarks, where Ram is pining after Lita. Aren't we all? And he's trying to build up the energy to finally asking her out.
Yeah, Lita, who's like in, I don't want to sound crass, but is in full cleavage mode this episode.
Oh, she's in more than that at some points, but yes, absolutely. So the dry run with Quark goes quite poorly. But believe it or not, somehow when he gets the opportunity for the real thing, it manages to go even worse. And it becomes clear. Like we already knew Lita had a thing for Ram, and they show that each other know they like each other here, but they just can't actually aren't able to actually communicate it to each other at the same time. Anyhow, now off to the A storyland here. Miles and Julian are playing darts. But they are soon interrupted by Robert Picardo in the form of Lewis Zimmerman, who promises to make Bashir immortal. Cut to the opening credits.
Yeah, a few things going on here. So we get our A and B story set up as usual. And, I have a feeling you and I are going to debate some of the merits of the A story, and I think there's a lot to mine there. But I think that the B story is actually kind of cute and really fun this week. So I have very few problems with that one.
Yeah, it's cute. I could see how the character Ram might grate on people a little bit. He's annoying, kind of like, come on, dude, get on with it.
Spit it out.
Yeah, but Matt, I might be, making too many assumptions here, but I think myself, maybe a lot of the audience, maybe yourself, have had a hard time working up the energy to asking somebody out and kind of relate to an extent.
We grew up watching Star Trek in the 90s when it wasn't cool. We were geeks.
Right. And to be fair, Ram should probably be nervous. Let's be honest here. Lita
I love Ram and I love Max Grodenchik, but let's be honest, she should be way out of his league.
Yeah, it's a joke in Seinfeld that she's into bald, short, quirky men. Quirky men. Yeah, seriously. But that doesn't really happen. So yeah, he should feel some level of anxiety about asking her out. But at a certain point, it's one of those things where, if I were in that position now, being where I am, just in life, it's not worth getting too nervous about. So it's like, I'm happy that they don't make this totally insufferable. They tread the line nicely at keeping it cute without it really making you start getting antsy watching it.
Yeah, and I think they do it to a point where, like, when the resolution of it happens, it's really kind of funny and kind of endearing, I would say. So I think the payoff at the end is what makes the whole process of getting there work.
And it's really helped by having two good supporting characters next to him, meaning Quark, slapping him around essentially, and then the Zimmerman character as being just a interesting but not completely unlikable foil for you to root against,
Right. I mean, well, he's basically so I'm trying to think. So this would have been during season 3 of Voyager. I think at this point we had already had that episode where Cass has to use the Zimmerman hologram to help repair the Doctor when he starts losing his memory.
Yeah, because I remember seeing him here now, and actually at the time going, "Oh, this is the real one that we saw before." I'm pretty
right. So this is not the first time we've met Louis Zimmerman, the man that the EMH was based off of. But what did you think when you first saw this episode and saw that it's not really a Voyager crossover? I mean, it's a crossover in the sense that it's a character that, created the character that looks like him on Voyager, but this is really, we're not dealing with many Voyager references at all. It's really just about Zimmerman.
Well, I can say that I was quite happy that we got this, quote unquote crossover, because it featured the only character, so to speak, actor.
One of the best parts about Voyager, yeah.
I wasn't too afraid to kind of really talk about it when I guested on the previous podcast. I'll go so far as to say he's basically the only character I gave a crap about on Voyager. So I'm happy that they found a way to weasel in the one element that I truly enjoyed from Voyager into DS9. So yeah, I was perfectly happy with this, pseudo crossover.
Right. I mean, I would probably extend that if I was being generous to like Dr. Seven and Janeway, but that would be about it.
Well, we'll get into that. That can kind of play into the A story here, but the Seven stuff, I just kind of got a little bit tired of the Spock and Data character.
No, that part of it did get old, but if you listen to our previous podcast, I always credit Jerry Ryan. She never phoned it in. She really was trying, and she gave some great performances as that character, and I think she gave that show a spark that it desperately needed at the point where she came in.
Well, yeah, that's very fair, and that's again pretty much going to be one of the same arguments that I'll make with this episode. Whatever fault and wherever I land with this episode, it is not the fault of any of the actors in this episode. It's the concepts of, is this correct decision making for characters and stuff?
Yeah. So
it's interesting.
So, but I was also very excited to see this sort of like pseudo Voyager crossover. So let's get into that, and let's get into some of the meatier portions of this episode.
Sure. So we come back to a scene that I've been waiting to talk about since the beginning of UP2. Quite honestly here. When we see the establishing shot of the station, we now have it constantly surrounded by Federation ships, Klingon ships, Bajoran ships.
I had forgotten that happened until you pointed it out to me last week, post the Dominion coming into the Alpha Quadrant. That's really cool.
Yeah, the station looks different because it's a lot more CGI-ish, I think. You kind of get a little bit more glows to it, but you have this constant military presence there. And in the background is a ship that always kind of looks like Voyager. Have you ever noticed this, Matt?
Yeah, it's kind of got the elongated saucer and the two little warp nacelles near the edge. It's clearly not an Intrepid class, but it looks like one.
It's a Jaeger class. And let me point out that this is far and away my most hated ship in all of Star Trek, and it's only in practically every episode of DS9 from here on out.
Because it's in a ton of background shots. So please elaborate.
So this is, I think we might have talked about this before, where it is something on the show called a kit bash model, where they literally go to the store and buy AMT models, Revell models, whoever, the ones that are actually consumer grade models.
Oh my God, is this actually a Voyager like saucer?
Yes, absolutely. So they went and got a Voyager model, took the saucer of it, and plastered it onto the body of a Maquis ship.
No.
And
really?
where the two phaser tips are, the wing phasers on the Maquis ship, they cut them off and then stuck on two engine nacelles from Voyager.
So it's literally a cut and paste Intrepid class ship
mixed with a scaled up, because the models were physically like, 1 to 72, 1 to 12. Those weren't really the scales, but they took two vastly wrong shaped and sized things, plaster them together, and stick it way in the background.
Because it looks weird.
It looks bizarre, yeah, because it's like that looks like that and that, and then
I don't hate the Intrepid class. Like, I don't hate the way it looks.
I like parts individually, but things look good with one consistent design. But when you kit bash, sometimes it looks good, sometimes it doesn't. And we see a better version of it coming up when they take the Jem'Hadar fighter into Dominion space. The Federation ship that attacks them is another kit bash. It's an Excelsior. The Centaur. It's a Excelsior saucer with a Miranda class roll bar stuck underneath it, and then two.
That didn't look as nearly as weird, I don't think.
No, that one works better. So people make these online all the time. Sometimes they look really cool and satisfying and proportioned right, and sometimes they look like the Jaeger class, the bastard that sits in the background of all these things.
I had no idea that was a cut and paste job, but that's, I mean, it explains the appearance. It looks like, Voyager's, preemie baby brother.
Yeah, and then you get this kind of stuff when you have the Battle of Wolf 359 or whatever the number was, because they just need a lot of ships in the background and just hit the toy store, bash them together, throw a lot of black paint, meaning they're burnt, and then just get them on the screen.
And yet we can never get a Sovereign class in any of these space battles coming up, which is very disappointing.
Hey, it would confuse the dumb audience.
I know. I'm going to save that bile for another episode, but the fact that we couldn't have any Sovereigns, we couldn't have any Intrepids, it all had to be Galaxies and old ships.
Yeah, and it's not even a rights issue because of all the other ships that you see in
First Contact. They own everything.
They're all in Deep Space Nine eventually, except for the one that they lost the CGI model of somehow. But anyhow, I digress. Yeah. So when we return, we get a data dump from Zimmerman. He explains that they are planning to supplement, if not kind of replace, the EMH with a long-term holographic doctor. This one can stay on extended periods of time in unique places. Now, here is where I think they missed a little bit of opportunity to keep the long-term, tension of the Dominion War going. Why not at least just name drop, hey, this was a back burner project that now we think we might need a lot of doctors in the next, 6 months. Maybe it might be a good idea to put this on the fast track, because we're about to go into a war.
Again, like we just got through saying with the Sovereign and Intrepid class and the fleets, I'm willing to bet you that we can't confuse the audience by having two shows with holographic doctors.
Well, yes, but you can at least name drop the overall idea of Deep Space Nine that there's a war coming. Anyhow,
no, I agree.
It's a little thing.
By the way, I do have a question about this long-term medical program, but I'll ask it now. What the hell? So obviously by the end of this episode, Bashir's not the model for it. Is this the model that became the Andy Dick one from the Prometheus?
That was absolutely my interpretation of it, yes. And Matt, this is the opportunity to work in your Andy Dick impression into this episode. So wherever you can.
Yeah. Okay. I think I know where I'm going to work it in, but do go on.
Sure. So like Matt said, they selected Bashir to serve as the template for this new one. And hey, we didn't get the true exposition clip, but let's have a different clip discussing this hologram.
This is a long questionnaire. I pride myself myself on my attention to detail. Let's see. Compare and contrast your eating habits at age 5 with those at 10, 15, 20, and 25.
It will be necessary for the Hollow Doctor to interact naturally with patients for weeks, possibly even months. The doctor will be expected to share amusing anecdotes, extend sympathy, swap dirty jokes, and even have culinary opinions formed by experience.
You mean this program is going to include all his personal likes and dislikes?
That is why we bothered to choose a human template in the first place.
Wow, think of it, Julian. If this thing works, you will be able to irritate hundreds of people you've never even met.
If you two could suspend your oh-so-amusing banter for the moment, I'd like to begin the optical parameter scans. What do you want me to do? Just stand there and look like a doctor. If you can.
So there is a certain level of nice continuity that runs through this episode, discussing the overall character of Bashir, how they basically openly reference, like, they didn't know what they were doing with him for years.
Well, yeah, the fact that he wasn't very well liked is referenced at several points throughout this episode. Like, I can't remember if the scene we just heard comes before or after that montage scene of all of them being interviewed, but that was some good fun.
No, that coming in a little bit. But I mean, I think it works quite well in this episode. If you have to somehow address that you are utterly clueless and did course correction changes at least a couple times on one of your major characters, there's probably no smoother way than having it be kind of a joke in the show.
Well, it's like Scream. It's like meta. They're referencing it in an episode that they're also having a major course correction for the character put in.
Right. And there's some really nice, friendship between Bashir and O'Brien through this one. When they shared a screen and when they're actually separate, there's some very nice little elements to that friendship here.
I mean, especially, I don't know if you made it a clip, but the emotional climax of this episode between the two of them is really, really good.
Yeah, it's one of the rare times I picked a 5-minute clip, so buckle up for that one because it's good.
No, it's very good.
It ends up being completely, Bashir's show in the end, but yeah, very good. So anyhow, we get that discussion there where, man, I just wonder again what the role of holograms are in the Federation.
Well, apparently, like in a couple of years from now, they're going to be slave labor.
Exactly. So it really makes it weird that they're putting in all this effort to make him, like, again, we saw that subspace relay station in TNG where there's 2 people stationed on it. And this is the idea that we would put a third one on there and leave him on just all the time to make it feel like he's an actual third person. So it's just, man, I don't know. It's very weird that they're going through all this problem to make them a real person. And then they also make them the mindless sex slave holograms and stuff. It's such a weird. It
is strange, but I would put most of that onus is on Voyager than this one.
Oh, Voyager had no idea what they were doing with that stuff. I mean,
because like I said, they went from this where it's a top level project to in like 1 or 2 years from now they're all mining ore, and I'm like, what was the turnaround in that? Like, and Starfleet just decided because it wasn't the nicest person in the world, they didn't want to work with the holograms at all.
And they make them like it suggests that every individual program really is, tailor-made, because why would you need to save a holographic doctor to put him there? Because it's like an actual individual, and that once the hologram starts forming, you can lose personalities and stuff. It's, man, I don't know. The hologram stuff, it falls apart if you kind of think about it too much.
Yeah, oh yeah, but for me, that's all on Voyager.
Yeah. But, hey, it's kind of fair game when you go back and look at all this stuff.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
From what they give you here, it's certainly an interesting concept, but I
think it's a great idea. I think, the having an emergency medical hologram, or in this case, a long-term one. How many times has the Doctor been the only person who could save Voyager simply because he is a hologram? Like, so why not have one at every place? And, instead of like trying to instead of complaining about the personality, let the thing stay on and form relationships. Obviously, that's working for the Voyager's doctor.
But they're suggesting it. Well, they did say long-term exploratory vessels, but that will have a human crew. But you would think they're saying this thing's going to go to places where you would hope the crew wouldn't just stay on that relay station for like 2-year stints or something like that.
But you know what I mean? If it's on long-range exploratory vessels, then why not like leave it on, let it adapt to its own environment? That way it becomes a better doctor program.
But then you get it turn into its own person, then you have all those ethical issues. Yeah.
I don't know. I think the EMH is a great idea that was sadly underutilized.
Yep. So anyhow, after that scene, they take a break, and Zimmerman and Bashir go off to Quark's to lust after Lita. Again, joining the crowd. And Lita shoots Zimmerman the eyes. Man, she must have a thing for bald dudes with bulbous heads.
I don't know what it is, but like, yeah, she clearly has a type, and clearly Bashir wasn't it because she dumped his ass.
Well, I mean, she might be just that kind of flirtatious person because, I mean, practically from the moment she's ever on the show, she's always flirting with somebody. So it just could be, you know. And
again, not trying to be crass, but like they show where does like the camera position starts like above Lita, like right down into the cleavage. We're pointing right down into like her best assets, I guess.
They know what they're doing. So since she was Bashir's ex, Lita must be interviewed by Zimmerman to get Bashir's full profile and to get all those good details. And because of that, Bashir asks Zimmerman to not interview his parents. And Zimmerman immediately calls Bashir's parents to interview them. Commercial break.
Yeah, because when you don't want someone to do something, you specifically lay it out for the person so that they get an idea that you don't want them to do it, and then they'll do it.
Yeah, there's again, this is like the nitpicky thing, but it's like the stuff in TV shows that really kind of drive me a little bit batty. 2 instances of it in this episode where it's explaining things to the audience no human being would ever actually verbalize. This one, him reading it into his pad. And 2,
the parents in the sickbay to the hologram.
Yes, that is just I promise never to speak our unspeakable crime, but I'll just say it right now for no real reason.
Yeah. No, I noticed that too. I was like, oh, that writing choice did not date well. I mean, it's very 90s though. They did that all the time in the 90s.
Oh, TV shows do it all the time. Still, I mean, it's just like it's the sister to that is the characters. Game of Thrones did this all the time in the first season of like, "Hello, Cersei, my sister," you know, and then just always reminding you of their relationships. No human being would ever talk
people
like
don't
that.
talk like that.
Exactly. So, Act 2. We come back to them checking out what is, at best, a pre-alpha version of the Bashirogram. And since we don't get many chances of seeing the beloved character of Voyager's Doctor on DS9, let's work it into this clip, and we'll get just a little taste of him.
Computer, activate LMH test program 1. Does it meet with your approval? Yeah, it looks all right. Except the eyes, they seem a little dead. They don't have that certain sparkle, zest for life that greets me in the mirror every morning.
Dull eyes.
This is a test run. I can assure you that the final product will be zesty. Does it talk? Not yet. First, I have to load the LMH with the basic database and software configurations of the original program. Computer, activate the EMH. Please state the nature of the medical emergency. This is a level 3 diagnostic. I understand. Diagnostics look good. Beginning data transferal. Data transferal? Am I being replaced? You're being supplemented by a new long-term program. By him? There, transfer is complete. Please state the nature of the medical emergency. Oh, that's original. He doesn't even look old enough to be a doctor. If you'd like my advice, you should delete this program. Now that I'm here, why would you need an archaic piece of software like him? Archaic? We can discuss this at another time.
Listen, he doesn't sound much like me. I'm sorry. Too zesty for you? Actually, he sounds more like you.
As I said, I've loaded the LMH with the basic EMH software package. We'll have to build a new set of algorithms based on your scintillating personality.
I hope you're more interesting than you seem. I'd hate to be boring.
There may be no preventing that. But we'll see what his friends have to say.
So we're really showcasing the funny dick character that is Zimmerman in that clip.
Yeah, and obviously it's not Voyager's EMH, but it looks like it, and Zimmerman and this EMH are basically Voyager's EMH in like season 1 of Voyager.
A little bit. I think there's probably a little bit more to him there, because I can kind of imagine that this is a backed up copy that he opens and interacts with a lot. He wasn't that season 1-ishy.
But he has 2. I was gonna say he hasn't worked out all the social niceties yet.
Oh yeah, no. So, but you can kind of infer that he had some relationship with the one he just destroyed. Apparently,
I know.
But I want to point out this is the first instance, I think, or one of the first instances, at least in this episode, where we start seeing the split screen technique, where we get 2 Zimmermans or 2 Bashirs on the screen, and it's pretty dang good this week.
Yeah, I didn't really notice anything, so like that's a plus.
Yeah, it's better than what I remember a Multiplicity being, even, and this is TV show level.
And again, I think we've come a long way from like that first season of TNG with Data and more.
Yeah,
seriously. where they don't look like they're quite looking at each other. They're looking in the same general direction, but they're not looking into each other's eyes.
Eye lines. Oh, we're just going into the the mad pet peeves in TV shows and movies. Eye lines on like special effects, and just thank God there's no dog in this episode, where the dog comes in and it's always just staring off screen at the handler. That drives me insane every time.
Yeah. No, I hear you, but and I also do want to compliment Alexander Siddig in the sense that we kind of gave him a hard time last week with his reaction face for the changeling right before he gets destroyed. I do like the fact, though, that he can really just play dead and wood and dry pan, because like when Bashir talks about like his eyes look a little bit dead, they do. So
yeah.
He does it. I mean, I don't know if that's a compliment. I guess it is, because that's what the actor was intentionally going for. But like, he looks like there's nothing there.
I guess emptying your brain of everything is it's a skill. So the next scene is the one that you referenced, Matt, and it's very interesting. I didn't make it a clip because I wanted to get some of the humor of Zimmerman in that last one. But after that is the series of very interesting fourth wall breaking interviews that Zimmerman is having with all the members of the crew and friends of Bashir, talking about them. And it's actually really kind of clever how they did it. All these interviewees are just looking straight into the camera. You're in the place of Zimmerman. And like the last question kind of misdirects you into thinking he's asking an inappropriate question to one, and it tails into the next. They don't break that fourth wall too often in Star Trek. I think we had a bad version of it before in the Worf trial episode. This one is something I think worked quite a bit better.
Well, yeah, because I mean, like, I don't remember what the Worf trial episode was like, but it was because it looks like they're talking to nobody because they're recreating the scenes. Here we know that they're talking to somebody.
Yeah, the Worf trial episode was the last scene of Goodfellas, of him walking off the stand talking to the camera practically. This one is played to a nice effect of comedy, which this episode has a strong comedy element to it, at least. And I think that
for its first half, I would say, yeah, that's true.
Well, even that, you still get
the B
storyline. Yeah, crap does get heavy in the A story in this. Arguably, some of the heaviest it gets in DS9 in my memory, really, because it plays back to the Visitor kind of stuff.
I mean, I did not, when I first watched this episode, I did not think in this fun little Voyager crossover we would be hitting on the eugenics wars.
Yeah. So in those clips with the fourth wall breaking, again, we get the really nice recap of the Paj era. Really, in a nutshell, they really lay it out there, don't they?
I just kind of love Kira. He just didn't know when to shut up.
Yeah, Jake was pretty harsh on him too. I mean, they really are letting him have it. It's like,
I did like the little comedic moment because God only knows what Morn said. All he can do is shrug when we see him. But
yeah, see, you even get a Morn joke in the mix there. So, yeah, this is one of those episodes where you don't think it's going to have the swerve where it does swerve to, and then, drops the bomb on you.
But yeah, I guess we'll talk about it when we get there. Maybe we disagree on this, but like it definitely swerves, but it doesn't feel like it's incongruent with what came before because it evolves out of what they're trying to learn about him.
Well, yeah. Well, we'll get into it, but my feelings on it are complex.
What I'm saying is like whether or not it was the right choice for the character in the writing of this specific storyline episode from point A to point B, I don't feel like it zigzagged off into an illogical direction to find this out because we're delving into his background and we're having to learn all this stuff about him, et cetera, et cetera.
And through the course of those things, we also get to learn a bit about Miles there too and their relationship because that was a really nice segment in it. And that Miles just kind of jokes the guy friend ball busting kind of relationship of, you never really talk to a guy, your guy friends how you feel. But, when you really have to mention it, he flat out likes Bashir and knows how genuinely good of a person he is. And he lets it, he tells everybody what we all already know how he feels about him. Yeah. So that was just a cute scene.
No, it was good. Very good.
But that whole series of interviews ends with Zimmerman getting, I'm going to say kind of inappropriate, by asking Lita out on a date. Nailed it.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, apparently there is no sexual harassment in the 24th century because, I mean, if we established that in the montage scene, because who does it cut to when he asks about inappropriate advances from Bashir? It cuts to Jadzia.
Yeah. So, like, go ask her out. More power to you, buddy. I think you should do it when you're not on the clock, working on your critical Starfleet thing.
But, Zimmerman don't give an F.
So, no, he doesn't, because when they are out, Zimmerman is laying it on thick. And I'm sorry, but she is eating it up. And we get a great moment where Rom is dropping Eves from way the hell on the other side of the station.
I kind of like the audio effect it put in, like, because you can kind of get a sense of how, like, I guess Ferengi hearing is selective. Like, they can hone in on a specific conversation from across the room.
Oh, I mean, we have that ability to an extent. Just imagine when, Ferengi can tune those things in, and you literally see him tuning in his ear to get that conversation. So anyhow,
I never did notice it, but like, you're kind of right though. Like I love Lita and I love her character and I love Chase Masterson, but in this episode, she kind of is an attention whore a little bit.
Yeah. Man, I don't know what her character is other than just like the comedy va-va-voom girl in this episode, because we see it in other episodes like the Union episode and down the line that there is a little bit more to her.
Yeah, there's definitely more to her.
But we don't necessarily see that so much in this episode.
No, she's the object being pined for, really, by two different men in this episode.
Right, because like you could kind of see it maybe that she is using Zimmerman to get to Rom, but I don't exactly see that as the case.
No, because like when we get to the scene that I'm sure we're going to get to, when she gets offered her own bar, you could see it in her face that like ooh, business prospects from this guy that's like into me and I can run my own play. Like, I don't think that at that point she's thinking about how to get to Rom.
No, right. Yeah, exactly. So it is a genuine, she is, keeping all her options open. It's not her being a shrewd character thing of manipulating the guy that she truly wants to be with. At least that's not my interpretation, because like what Matt said, I mean, this seems genuine on her part.
I mean, my interpretation of it is that her interest is genuine, but I also get the sense of like I'm talking about scenes that haven't happened, but I always get the sense that she would drop all of them in an instant if Rom would actually spit out what he wants to spit out.
Right, because here you go, continuing on with the notes. Rom overhears Zimmerman putting on his moves and charges over to interrupt them. And Lita has no problem jumping up to talk to Rom. She clearly wants him. But he practically throws up in his own shoes here again and can't ask her out. Fumbles it again, practically at the goal line here, Rom. Yeah, this is a slam dunk.
I know. This is like, you talked about like comparisons to us earlier. I don't know about you, Matt, but like for me, asking someone out, it's always, you know, that fear of rejection. If I have someone throwing themselves at me, I'm going to have no problem asking them out.
Right. Man,
if I'm interested.
This is where it gets so close. If it wasn't kind of funny, this is where you would be pulling your hair out, because Rom knows she likes him too, so there shouldn't be any debate in his head.
I was going to be like, what does this woman have to do? Like strip naked, which she does later in this episode. But
yes. So anyhow, we'll move on from that. Soon after, Bashir and Cisco are up in his office discussing station business. And just then, Bashir's parents arrive and Bashir's heart drops into his stomach. Commercial break.
Now, I have to say one thing about his parents, even though we technically haven't met them yet. We at least get their faces. I always, when I was younger, I used to confuse this actress who plays Bashir's mom with the actress who was in Star Trek Beyond, the one with the deep voice, the Admiral.
Oh yeah, I'm blanking on her name. This actress I'm not familiar with.
I'm not, but she's they've kind of got the same look, and I always thought for a long time it was the woman from Star Trek Beyond, but it's clearly not.
This House of Sand and Fog as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. The voice is not a match.
No, the voice is definitely not a match, but like the facial features and the general skin tone and like the look is. It's
well,
not that far off.
The thing I can't separate is his father, who is in Seinfeld as Babu, the Pakistani restaurant owner that Jerry screws over.
He's in a ton of stuff too. Like I can't like name most stuff, but he's just one of those faces that I see everywhere.
Yeah, and he apparently was very happy with this role because he said, you know, he's a character actor, shows up for little bits and things, and that this is one of the few times where he actually got to act. Which he did. He
does a good job. I like him. I like these two. They're good.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, let's dive right into it into Act 3, because introductions are made all around. Richard, Jules, his father, has no problem talking here. And Bashir realizes that the parents are here at the request of Zimmerman. And Jules quickly extradites his family from this office. And then he rushes off to confront Zimmerman. But Zimmy ain't about to apologize for any of this. Their input here is key.
And plus, I mean, I have to say, like, Bashir never had, like, I get the sense in this, from what he says about himself in the past in this episode, I get the sense that maybe, like, I don't want to diagnose because I'm no doctor, but, like, maybe he was, like, on the spectrum, like the autism spectrum when he was little. So, like, talk about misreading cues. Like, don't tell the guy who clearly doesn't like you not to do something.
There's so much good in this episode, and then there's so much easy button stuff, and that's part of the easy button stuff. You know, it wouldn't have been that big of a stretch just to have the parents show up. You didn't have to have the moment of Bashir saying don't have them show up. It wouldn't strain credulity all that much to just have them arrive and just be a genuine shock of just having no setup to it. I don't know.
It is what it is, but that part of it always kind of bothered me. It's like, well, you told it to someone who clearly doesn't like you. So what did you think was going to happen?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the character stuff, but this episode has a heavy hand of like reverse engineering writing, I think. And I'll try to make arguments to that coming up.
Oh, it's this whole episode is going to be an exercise in retcon, which I'm sure we'll discuss.
Well, yeah, seriously. So anyhow, Zimmerman blows off Jules. He has an errand to run, and that's to go give flowers to Lita. And he catches her leaving the shower. And he gives her a job offer to go to Jupiter Station with him to run the cafe there. And in her shock, She comes close to accepting and also flashes Zimmerman her orbs in the celestial temple, if you catch my drift. So, I know.
I have to ask, though, like, because, like, I think you and I probably will have the same problem, but, like, I didn't... It's clearly for objectification why she's in the towel and all that stuff in the scene, but somehow I don't feel as like creeped out about it than I do like the decon gel scenes in Enterprise where they're having to like literally rub each other down with baby oil.
Well, because this is like still played to comedy and it is still kind of like like taboo stuff.
Well, I mean, like also too, like
the Enterprise stuff is just like, oh, we're going to be sexy on UPN. And that's just garbage.
Well, because it felt like the Enterprise stuff was forced. Here, it's like, it's completely believable that you might walk in on someone attractive when they're just coming out of the shower. Like, that's just a thing that might happen.
It's one of those things where it's like, you know, pornography. I know when I see it. Somehow this is not exploitative. Enterprise is exploitative. You know, the aggressively hard nipples in Enterprise maybe is the you know, the big difference between the two, but just
no. I mean, like I said, it just feels like this is a, you know, take it for what it's worth. It's a more natural situation, I think, to walk in on someone just coming out of the shower than to put someone in a room and have them rub oil on each other.
Or the Into Darkness moment.
Yeah,
direct parallels, you know.
Yeah, even though you and I come to blows on that movie, yeah, I can't really.
Oh, say what you want about the movie. Scene. I mean, there's trailer moments and commercial moments.
Yeah.
Do you remember like those decon scenes? Were those in the commercials for Enterprise?
I don't think they were, but like it's definitely in the pilot.
Well, okay, you know, you want to catch people early on, so you get the drift. Whatever.
I mean, I got to see, you know, Connor turning without a shirt on, so it was fine.
Yeah. Anyhow, we have a nice, good old-fashioned Bashir family dinner. And we get hints here that Richard, Jules' father, is a bit of a, I don't know, con man's a little bit strong. But, man, at least he's a big BSer, big talker with nothing to back it up.
He kind of has... He's kind of a variation on like a more boisterous variation on like Worf's adopted father. Like, you know, I have all the specs and diagrams at home.
Yeah. So, let me finish out this act and then let's get into the father, shall we? So Jules, it shows here that he's rather disgusted by his father's apparent job jumping and kind of flake attitude, I'm going to go kind of say. And we get the idea that he might not be a great guy. It's complicated. And Bashir then cautions the family to not get into any dangerous old family business. There's a family secret here at play. And the stakes here are that Jules could end up with his career ruined and the parents can land in prison. What's up here? Jules storms out. Screw it. You know, it finds out Bashir is genetically modified. I want to kind of delve into his father here, if you don't mind. And this is where I kind of think this is where we see the heavy hand of writing here, because the story for having a satisfied audience, I think, is dictating that you need to have an arc with Bashir, Julian Bashir's interaction with his father, being angry with him and finding some sort of peace at the end and some sort of resolution going forward. And to do that, they wanted to start the father out and have his motives maybe not be necessarily the best. And the way they settled on this is Bashir is resentful for him and that the father is a failure through his whole life and that he did this genetic engineering on the son to make the son his one great accomplishment. And that's the only good thing that Richard has ever done, Bashir's father. And I kind of get a little annoyed with this because this is one of those things where we talk about this frequently on the show. I saw this when I was first 14 years old, give or take. And now I'm a father myself watching this. And watching this, I got a little annoyed in that.
I think you're on the same page that I am.
Right. They don't need to have any justification why the parents did this. The mother is the saving grace here. So
she's great, but like I think what you're saying is something that I feel, which is that I don't get why Bashir's so mad about this.
Yes, that all kind of goes into this, but they make the father look kind of two-faced in his motives for helping his son. And I can just say that now as a father,
make it selfish when it's not.
Right. Now as a father, I would say that I would do anything to make sure my son's healthy or developing right. So it just feels weird that they needed to make the father so shady to have a motive to try and help his son be healthy and happy. I didn't need that, but that's where I think the writing just says we have to have an internal arc here to have it turn around. And so let's get heavy-handed in the writing. The father loved his son and wanted to make him healthy. That's all the justification he needs.
You know what it is that, I do think it's the writing that's an issue, but I think that it mostly stems from the fact that, we need to have this kind of mystery about what did he do, and then we find out what he did, and then, well, why did he do what he did? But these are characters that all presumably know all this information already, so it's again telling it to us, the audience, and it feels a bit unnatural, no pun intended, that way.
There's bigger crimes to that coming up. This scene wasn't so bad with that, but man, I don't know. But then
they make him shifty for that reason. It's not because what he did was bad. They make him shifty to make us in suspense, and then they make him shifty later in the sense of it's to keep us on the hook about well, why did he do this very illegal thing? Was it for his own benefit? Like, if we knew that he was just a good man throughout the whole thing, which he is, then there wouldn't be any sort of like hook, I guess, for the audience. I would think.
See, I'm going to argue that we clearly find out there was no debate on his mother's side. Her motives in this was clearly, we want a healthy, happy son. Boom, done. Yeah. Right. No discussion there. I don't think that's ever quite as clear with the father necessarily, because Bashir, and it's in clips and stuff coming up, but Bashir is very pointed in that you did this out of your own selfish stuff. So I think it's at least still left hanging that Richard's motives were less clear and maybe less selfless, which that's something I don't ever want in that character. And I don't need any justification other than a parent's love for a kid. And unfortunately, they have to monkey with that to make it a suspenseful story, where I think it might have been better dropping that to make his character, I don't know, a real father.
But that's my point, is that it's because they're trying to build suspense that it comes out weird. If they weren't trying to do that for us, it would come out differently.
Right. And that is one of my reviews of this in the nutshell. There's like really interesting individual concepts riddled throughout this episode, right? But it's just the way that they get characters convincingly to these revelations and to these concepts. It's not satisfying. It's weird.
It's strange.
Not natural.
Yeah. I don't think convoluted. Convoluted is probably the best word for it. Just kind of creeping my thoughts. I don't hate this episode by any stretch of the imagination. I think there's some really good stuff here, and I don't think it's an episode you should skip. I do think it could have been done better.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And again, my feelings on this episode are very complex in that it has all these levels of like acting, great, execution overall, maybe not so good. Certain concepts, great.
Performances, good.
Yeah, exactly. But long-term impact on how characters should ever go, bad. So it's a really interesting episode to kind of critically kind of go into.
Yeah, it's very much a mixed bag, but I don't like, if I were like putting a column of like good and bad DS9 episodes, I don't think I would put this in the bad column.
Well, personally. Yeah.
But we'll find out at the end.
Right. So advancing towards the end, let's get into Act 4, where we eventually have the super long clip here. So we come back to Lita just practically begging Rom at this point, just give me a reason to stay. Say anything. Come on. Say something. Ugh. All right, whatever. It's good. It's all okay because we get a final good, funny payoff. But
no, it's seriously like, are you like the dumbest person in the world right now?
It's pretty close. Yeah, we established that he practically is. Anyhow, clearly he can't manage it. So now it's her turn to storm off. And now we go to the science lab where the parents walk in and talk to Jules. And like we said, really ham-fisted promise not to mention that Bashir was genetically modified and engineered by them. And Jules is very cold to this revelation for some reason.
Well, it's because Miles and Zimmerman pressed the button that would have prevented Bashir from going, what the hell are you doing in my sick bay?
Oh, there you go. Thank you, Matt. Very good. So after that, they leave, and Miles and Zimmerman walk around the corner having overheard everything, and they disable the hologram Jules that the parents have been talking to. So this
kind of makes the parents look like dum-dums too, because they don't realize that he has no expression on his face at all.
Yes. And it's not like they're living in a universe where this would be the first hologram they've ever seen. They know why they're there, presumably. So, and Bashir rightfully points out, he screams at Miles.
Well, not only that, but Bashir left them previously when he was angry. So there is literally no expression on this person's face. You don't think there would be a little bit of resentment if this was the real one?
I think this episode had some script difficulties, and this just screams of the moment of F it. How do we get through this section? We don't. Here you go.
Well, 2-second post-it note. It's like how do we get this information conveyed so that Zimmerman can find it out? And it's weird. There had to be another way. I can't think of it right now. Maybe by the end of the episode I could think of another way.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
So, but hey, it does make a certain level of sense. And Bashir starts yelling at them, and Miles talks about how this is all just like it all happened too quick, or however he explains it. I can completely see how they just go, hey, what's going on? And then it gets really weird it gets to the point where then it will be really weird to jump out and say, hey, stop talking to the hologram. So you just let it play out to avoid that uncomfortable moment. So I can completely see how they might hang out in the back.
Yeah, but I also get, this is one part of the episode where I do get, where I think Bashir's frustration is well founded, is because it's like, yeah, you did kind of just let them stand there and incriminate themselves.
Right. So, hey, that's the intro to the clip. So what I like in this long clip is it's, ends up being a monologue by Bashir here, but it's really nice. It starts out screamy between two friends and ends up being pretty moving and heavy towards the end. And it's a nice scene.
Appropriately screamy, I would say.
Oh, yeah, sure. So, hey, here you go. Sit back. Nice long clip.
I can't believe you set them up like that. We didn't set them up. They just happened to walk in while the program was running. Zimmerman thought it would be a good idea to test the program's ability to cope with an unexpected situation.
And you let them go on? You let them stand there and make fools of themselves while the two of you sat in the back room and laughed?
It didn't do that good at coping. It just was a shit standing there.
Right.
But it has, and now we've got a problem. I don't want to talk about it. Julian, Zimmerman is going to file a report saying that Dr. Bashir is unsuitable for computer modeling because of his suspected genetically enhanced background. Do you know what's going to happen when that report gets back to Starfleet Medical? It's going to be a formal investigation.
I think I would like to talk about the genetic enhancement portion of this plot, in the sense that my frustration with it is something that's in the universe, in the sense of because Khan happened, we can never do any genetically modification ever again for any reason.
Yeah, we'll get into that. I kind of wanted to touch on that. So mention whenever, I suppose.
Freak or monster. would also be acceptable.
I'm going to use the bathroom real quick since this is long.
I was 6. Small for my age, a bit awkward physically, not very bright. In the first grade, when the other children were learning how to read and write and use the computer, I was still trying to turn a dog from a cat, a tree from a house. Didn't really understand what was happening. I knew that I wasn't doing as well as my classmates. There were so many concepts that they took for granted that I couldn't begin to master. And I didn't know why. All I knew was that I was a great disappointment to my parents. I remember when they made the decision. But just before my 7th birthday, we left Earth for a Digian Prime. First, I remember being really excited at seeing all the aliens in the hospital. Then they gave me a room, began the treatments, and my entire world began to change.
What were the treatments? Some kind of DNA recoding?
The technical term is accelerated critical neural pathway formation. Over the course of the next 2 months, my genetic structure was manipulated to accelerate the growth of neuronal networks in my cerebral cortex, and a whole new Julian Bashir was born.
In what way did they change it?
Well, my mental abilities were top priority, of course. My IQ jumped 5 points a day for over 2 weeks, followed by improvements in my hand-eye coordination, stamina, vision, reflexes, weight, height. In the end, everything but my name was altered in some way. When we returned to Earth, we even moved to a different city. I was enrolled in a new school using falsified records my parents obtained somewhere. Instead of being the slowest learner, I was the star pupil.
And no one ever suspected?
No, there's no stigma attached to success, Chief. After the treatments, I never looked back. But the truth is, I'm a fraud.
You're not a fraud. I don't care how many enhancements.
Matt, I didn't hear your last clip. Is the last clip is not the Admiral talking, is it?
Personality or compassion or any of the things that make a person truly human.
No, it's the last confrontation he has with his parents, I believe.
Isn't that when the Admiral's talking?
No, he has one more scene where he is in their quarters where he just says, "Tomorrow I'm going to go resign."
Wait, when we get to the Admiral talking, that's when I wanted to talk about the genetic enhancements.
Yeah.
He brings up Tom in that speech.
All right.
Once the truth comes out, I'll be cashiered from the service. It's that simple.
There must be something we can do. We can't just give up.
There is something I can do. Resign before Dr. Zimmerman files his report.
Oh, Julian.
It's over, Martha. I always knew this could happen. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'd like to be alone.
So coming out of that again, that's a pretty rough scene to listen to, and he's nailing it with that story about him being a kid and being aware enough, I guess. I don't know if that's him after the fact noticing it, but it's heartbreaking to hear how he recognized
he knew he was a disappointment.
Yeah, basically. So it's like this episode, after, because of that scene, I went up and, held my kid a little bit more after watching this. But it's because of that clip that it doesn't quite feel right to me that Bashir would be so resentful of this.
Yeah.
Like,
no,
okay.
I'm completely on board. I don't get why this is such a horrible thing that caused this breakdown in the family.
Well, It's because he didn't like his father before. This is where it's like it's too contrived.
Right.
Is like the way, because like, okay, maybe Bashir wouldn't be. He'd have complex emotions about it, so maybe he wouldn't be like super thankful about it because he knows that this is supposed to be morally and ethically wrong to do. But maybe the more natural thing would be, well, it is what it is. You know what I mean? It's not that he would have that much anger still in him about it, and maybe not the super joys, but he's lived with this for so long that it's hard to imagine him being this angry about it. I would have thought it would be a little bit more, well, this is just the way that it is now.
I think it could have been helped if it was played different. If he had played it more instead of just being angry and resentful over the fact that it happened, I would have liked to see more conflict of like, all of my knowledge, all of my accomplishments, my graduation from Starfleet Medical, my posting here on DS9, was that ever really me? Or was that because of what was done to me? You know, that kind of like identity crisis would have been nice.
Right. And I guess that's implied to a degree, but that's not necessarily the focus.
No, it's not the focus, but don't you think that would have made for a more like justifiable reason of why he's so much in emotional distress over this?
Yeah, it would have been a more justifiable thing if we had to go with him being distressed over it, you know? So it's like what we got, we don't like, but we kind of think they at least should have gone in one of a couple different ways from what we got. So, man, such highs and such lows in this episode, you know?
Yeah, but I mean, for me, the highs are so high.
Well, yeah, pretty much.
And the lows haven't been nearly the lows of some of the crap that we've gotten these last couple seasons.
Well, that's true. So do we want to get into like the debate over the whole overarching character of Bashir and the repercussions of this?
Yeah, I mean, because this is something that I know you wanted to hit on, so let's hit on
it. Quite frankly, I hate that they did this to him. Right. I think it's, well, beyond just like the ham-fisted just, oh, really? We're just going to not have any idea last week, and the writers admit that. They had no idea one episode earlier that they were going to do this to him. So that's just bad on its own, but this is not what I thought the ethos of DS9 should be. DS9 is flawed people, real people, widowed people, you know, war-torn PTSD people, all that. We didn't have the superhuman Spock or, you know, the cold human calculator Spock or the Pinocchio boy Data kind of character. And the fact that they had to like put one of those guys in here when they were going down their own unique path and to just ham-fisted change a character, retcon him like crazy. I think it's just so bad to the character and just the philosophy of Deep Space Nine. We just don't need this superhuman character here.
I mean, you're right in that we don't need him. I think that had they done things a little bit differently, it could have worked into the pathos of Deep Space Nine fine. Personally, I don't mind this. I think it makes Bashir an even more interesting character. However, I would have changed a couple things. I probably would have done this, you know, a season earlier maybe, so that we would have had more time to explore this. And I also would have, you know, if we're doing the identity crisis that I was mentioning a few minutes ago, then I think it could have worked into the pathos of Deep Space Nine in that, you know, for all of his genetic perfection and all of his accomplishments, he's still a flawed person because it might not, you know, those might not have even been real.
See, that's the part that I think you said it makes him a more interesting person. I think it significantly makes him a less interesting person because all those character flaws that he had been, I'm guessing somehow behind the scenes working to overcome, building friendships and not just skeeving people out constantly. Those were real flaws that he had been working to like make himself a better person over. And like that weird heroic hero seeking thing, it got stamped out, but then you get to see him be like a truly earned hero in that episode with Jake. This takes all that learning and evolution of him as a person, throws it out the window because it shows you he was faking all that before. And yeah, it makes him a flawed character still, I suppose, but that character flaw is so much less interesting than him like growing as a person.
I definitely hear you. I don't think he's always faking it. I know that he's hiding it sometimes, but I take it in episodes like the one with Jake or something like The Quickening. That's not him faking it. That's him being overwhelmed by circumstances, because we know from the past that as difficult as it might be, these genetically enhanced humans are defeatable. But I see. I'm torn because I really hear what you're saying. I honestly do, but I like what this ends up doing to his character. It goes in places that I find it very interesting had we not taken this step. So I don't know. I'm kind of torn on this.
Yeah. I can completely see the other side, but you just look at it. It's what you find is more interesting as a character, right? Because you look at the famous thing that has been mentioned before, and it'll be talked about again. He, in the final Starfleet exams, he got every question right except for one. And you look at it from two different characters, pre and post this episode. The episode before this, he missed that one question because he was overconfident. He thought he was hot crap, but he overlooked a little bit of a detail and missed it because he is this hotshot doctor that has his eyes set on the adventure out there.
Whereas if you look at it after this episode, he misses it on purpose because somehow being the salutatorian is less obvious than being the valedictorian.
Right. And if you look at those two characters, because this character is pre and post this episode, we all know that. Which version of that character do you find more interesting?
No,
I argue it's the first one.
You're right. No, that when you put it in those terms, absolutely. I don't know. I can't argue with anything that you're saying, but it doesn't ruin the character for me going forward. Is I guess what I would say.
Well, it doesn't ruin him because so much of the stuff that we really like about him, his interpersonal stuff with O'Brien and relationships with the Daxes coming up, that's still there, but it's just so much of the depth of the character is just now, it's gotten so much less interesting to me.
Yes, I like it when it is a aspect about Julian's character, but not necessarily the focus of it. When the genetically enhanced thing is the focus of it, like when we meet those other genetically enhanced people, those are not among my favorite episodes. But when it's little things like just here or there in the background, or when I would argue like for late season DS9, when they finally bring in Section 31 for Bashir, that stuff works great, despite him being genetically enhanced working for Section 31. But
well, yeah, I mean, at that point, it's like, well, that's where I'm saying Bashir should kind of act how I'm saying it. It is what it is at that point, and they make good for a situation I don't think they should ever have gotten into. I don't think his interactions with Section 31 couldn't have happened if this revelation never happened. He's always a really capable character. So it's like, it is what it is later on.
I can't remember though, like, cause I don't remember a lot about that first episode where we meet Section 31, but I wonder if they took an interest in him specifically because they learned he was genetically enhanced. And why wouldn't you want that on your team?
I'm virtually sure they actually call that out.
It's been a long time since I've seen that first Section 31 episode, so I don't remember, but I would think that's why they took an interest in him.
Hey, I'm saying I think this is a wrong term, but for the character. But hey, if you make good from the poor decision you made earlier, that at least helps it.
Right. It doesn't. My point is, like, it doesn't cripple this character going forward.
No, and I'm not going to really argue that. And it'll be interesting to revisit this again when we see him have the episode or two with the other genetically engineered people that weren't as successful as him. Like, I don't remember if I liked those episodes or not.
I don't have fond memories of those episodes, but I'll be interested to see what it's like looking at it from a critical eye.
Yeah, exactly. I'm kind of looking forward to that, sort of, because I kind of don't think I like them. I got a little annoyed with them.
I mean, yeah, I thought they were a one-note thing that got played out way too much in the 2 episodes that they're in. But, I mean, that's a debate that we'll have when we do Season 6.
Right, because right now, we have Act 5 to cover first. And in this final act, Rom is lamenting letting Lita go. A lot of L words in that sentence. And Quark slams him for his previous screw-ups with his ex-wife. I can't remember if we actually got into the details of what happened with them before this episode or not.
Well, we just knew that his ex-wife had run off with something, but like we didn't know the reasons why she ran off, and it was clearly to swindle him out of whatever money he had.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of rough on Quark. So I guess there is a little bit more female lobes going on Ferenginar than...
Well, it was her dad, remember? It was her dad. Her dad was the one who...
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, I missed that part. All right, well, whatever. So after that, we join up with a dejected Jules. He's ready to give up, like we heard there with O'Brien, but Richard is steaming and wants to fight this all the way to the top. And let's have one last clippy.
We're not going to just take this lying down, that's for sure. I'll arrange for legal counsel. We're going to fight this all the way to the Federation Supreme Court. We can't fight this. You better change that attitude right now if you want to hang on to your career.
Jules, listen to your father. He's trying to help you.
Neither of you is listening to me. I don't want to drag this through the courts.
We're a little beyond worrying about your wants, Jules. We have a serious problem here. We have to stop the whining and concentrate on coming up with a new plan.
A new plan? Yes. Let's come up with a new plan. That's the way we do things in this family, isn't it? We don't face our problems. We come up with new plans. Don't like your job? Well, move along to the next one. Don't like the law? Well, find a way to get around it. But whatever you do, do not accept responsibility.
As misguided as some of the resentment is, I do like the way he acts it.
Accomplishments. And you still want to behave like a...
That's what I'm saying. It's just bad decisions, but they make good use of them.
I mean, great. Like, I don't have a performance I'm dissatisfied with this whole episode.
No.
You said before, I'm your legacy, your proud gift to the world. Well, Father, your gift is about to be revealed as a fraud, just like you.
I'm still your father, Jules. And I will not have you talk to me like that.
No. You used to be my father. Now, you're my architect. The man who designed a better son to replace the defective one he was given. Well, your design has a built-in flaw. It's illegal.
You're so smart. You know so much you could sit there and judge us. But you're still not smart enough to see that we saved you from a life of remedial education and underachievement.
I don't know that. You didn't give me a chance.
You were falling behind.
I was 6 years old. You decided I was a failure in the first grade.
You don't understand, Jules. You never did.
No, you don't understand. I stopped calling myself Jules when I was 15 and I found out what you'd done to me. I'm Julian. What difference does that make? It makes every difference. Because I'm different. Can't you see? Jules Bashir died in that hospital because you couldn't live with the shame of having a son who didn't measure up.
That's not true. We were never ashamed of you, never.
I'm sorry, Mother, but the truth is...
You don't know. You've never had a child. You don't know what it's like to watch your son. To watch him fall a little further behind every day. You know he's trying, but something's holding him back. You don't know what it's like to stay up every night worrying that maybe it's your fault. Maybe you did something wrong during the pregnancy, and maybe you weren't careful enough.
Yeah, she's the MVP of this episode for sure.
Maybe you passed on a genetic defect without even knowing it.
I'm sure.
No, this is important. You can condemn us for what we did. You can say it's illegal or immoral, whatever you want to say. But you have to understand that we didn't do it because we were ashamed, but because you were our son, and we loved you.
So
I do like how that ends the argument.
Yeah, and because that's all that you ever had to say in this episode, because yes, right, exactly. That is the whole reason why you do this. For every bit that kind of felt off with Richard. This felt absolutely right. And she didn't have that much of a role in this episode.
No, but this scene alone, I think, makes Amsha and the actress who plays her the MVP of this episode.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, she just comes in with such like emotional weight of, man, I'm getting texts about Game of Thrones. Sorry. But it's like,
I got the feeling like this is an argument they've had times and times and times again, and she just sits there and takes it. And then this was her kind of, not her breaking point, but you know what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, where, I mean, has anyone, gotten into arguments where you're up on your righteous stand screaming down at people that, I am right here. And then somebody just comes up and puts it like perfect and like shames you into realizing, no, you're just not right on this. And this is why we did it. And we did it out of frickin' love. And, get off your high horse, quit looking down on us for our decisions that we made from only the greatest of reasons. And yeah, that just shuts you up because Bashir knows it in that moment, right? He recognizes like, oh crap. Yeah, you're right.
I mean, why would his mother lie to him?
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. It's more than just that. He just realizes, right.
I mean, but this is coming from, I think it's important that it came from her because we get the impression he never had any resentment for her. He might have been at odds with his father, but the fact that it's his mother shaming him.
Well, you could almost see this as an argument that they've had how many years now, 20 years, and that the father and son would get going on it. And then if the mother would step in, both of them would go, Mom,
stay out of this.
Stay out of this. Yeah. So you can completely see that. And that it's finally reaching this critical mass that she just steps in and drops the,
I've had it.
Yeah. And just like puts them kind of both in their place to an extent. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. In the sense that, she does what the father tells her not to do and basically shuts him up, shames him into silence.
Yep. And shames him into action, but maybe more focused, correct action, because let's go on. Bashir ends that clip by saying he doesn't want his parents to do anything. He's just going to go to Cisco in the morning and resign. Why he would wait in the morning? I think his genetically engineered foresight knows that something's going to happen to maybe save his skin.
Well, also, too, I mean, Cisco and his grumpy nature. Would you want to wake him up at 12 in the morning to have this deep conversation?
No, but you write your letter and have it sitting on his desk.
Well, yeah, okay, all right, fine. But still nothing would get done until the morning.
Sure. But in all seriousness, I think Cisco, as we've kind of like talked about on the show, is kind of like the father figure on this show. Yes, with maybe the exception of possibly Janeway, of any of the captains on Star Trek, he would be the one I would feel most comfortable calling at 1 a.m. and going, hey, Cap, we need to talk.
Yeah, but he's also the one I would least want to piss off.
Right, but he is not the one. You wouldn't get angry Cisco at that call.
Well, we don't know. This is all speculation, but yeah.
It's what we do, Matt. Anyhow, all right. So the next morning, Bashir is off to Cisco's office. But Bashir's parents are already there with a hologram of the Admiral. Say goodbye to the holo communicator.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is it.
Until, like, doesn't it shows up kind of in Nemesis.
Yeah, well, it's not a communicator. It's just that he projects a hologram into Picard's ready room.
So
Nemesis is bad anyway. Let's ignore it.
Yeah, pretty much get rid of that canon. Data lives. Turns out they have reached a plea bargain. Basically, Jules can stay as a doctor and will keep his commission. Turns out Richard will now go to jail for 2 years. This was his idea.
New Zealand, where Paris was, I think.
Send me to New Zealand for 2 years, really, yeah.
I was going to say, like,
I mean, gardening.
I was going to say that, I get it. Like, it makes sense. Like, Bashir's upset that he's going to prison, but I'm like, dude, have you seen Federation prisons? They're like, it's like, when, actors who aren't serious about going into rehab go into rehab in, like, Malibu. It's like, yeah, let me fall off the wagon and go to rehab in Malibu.
So we're to assume they're not doing the, you know, brainwashing that they were doing in TOS. Yeah. Well, it's 2 years. You got a lot of stuff to.
No, but also in TOS in that episode with Garth of Izar, don't they come up with like the cure for mental illness? They just inject him at the end and he's fine.
Sure, why not?
So,
anyhow,
it's weird, but like, you know, we saw the beginning of Voyager where the New Zealand prison. It looks like a nice place. Yeah, send me there for 2 years.
Okay, what we don't see is, yeah, they get to do, you know, nice gardening during the day, but then the evening is all the Levuco treatment. What's the treatment from A Clockwork Orange? That's their whole night.
You think?
Yeah, sure. Hey, you got a lot of, you know, ground to cover in 2 years, because they treat a 2-year sentence as, isn't that rather harsh for apparently breaking one of the main crimes in the Federation, because this all led to the eugenics war.
Yeah, let's talk about this for a second, because
please do.
I mean, we get the name drop of, you know, for every Julian Bashir, there's a Khan Singh waiting in the midst. And look, I get that genetic enhancement is something that's, you know, it's controversial now, and we have things like stem cells. So I get that it would be controversial in the future. And obviously we see from Khan that it can go horribly, horribly wrong. And also, if you want to count Enterprise as canon at this point, Sung's augments fits into that category too. But it's this thing with Star Trek, and it's not just this episode that does it. Most of Star Trek does this, where, like, you know, because it went bad once, we must never do it again under any circumstances. Like, ban it all. Let's just shut down that avenue of knowledge for good. You know, because Khan happened, there can never be any more genetic enhancements for any reason ever again. And, you know, because David Marcus used protomatter in the Genesis device, we can never explore the Genesis as a terraforming agent again, you know?
Mm-hmm. And are we to assume this just means genetic enhancements or genetic therapy in general?
They make it sound like enhancements.
I hope so, because clearly young Jules Bashir had some pretty significant.
But that's what I mean. Like, okay, maybe they meant therapy, because I get the, like, messing with genes of any type in order to, like, save, in order to prevent something that's non-critical from happening. I mean, as harsh as it is, my feeling about Starfleet stance is that, well, yeah, he would have been in remedial education, but hey, it's not like he was dying or anything.
Because it's so weird, because, man, this is where it's tricky to get into, because...
But you see what I mean? It's just like, I don't like when Star Trek, and usually DS9 doesn't do this, but, like, I don't like it when Star Trek deals in absolutes. And I have this problem with the Prime Directive a lot.
Yeah, and only the Sith deal in absolutes. It really is. It seems like it's a whole kind of system of governing, or at least a strong philosophy of embracing the slippery slope argument. Because it sure seems like it's recognized that Bashir has severe developmental disabilities here growing up, and that this technology exists. Like, and they couldn't give him just, like, help to get to average. That apparently was a door closed to them, so they had to go above and beyond, because Starfleet won't even let the little, like, help happen.
Well, let's say it wasn't, like, developmentally delayed. Let's say he was born with something like Tay-Sachs disease, which is a genetic disorder that, you know, usually ends up with kids dying at very early ages. Mm-hmm. You're telling me that if there was a cure for that involved genetic enhancements or gene therapy, is the moral decision to let the kid die because we might have another Khan?
This sure seems like that's suggesting that's the case. Yeah, because I would think there's, like, it's not all or nothing. They didn't have to make him into superhuman. They could have made him into average human through this therapy, that they didn't have to go full augment on physical abilities as well.
Or superior, or, like, you know, it was a superior human breed superior. Don't enhance his ambition then.
All right. So it's, man, it's just so crazy, because maybe that's where they're talking about Richard's evilness, is that a simple, like, just get him to average option was available, but because of his desire to make a super kid as his only thing, he elected to go the illegal route. But that isn't by no means suggested that was an option in this episode.
Right, and that's not even how this plays, to me.
Right. No.
So, it bothers me when we have to deal in complete black or white. We can never do this again. We must always do this. There is no exception to the prime directive. The prime directive is really where I have most of my resentment issues.
Oh,
about
what
this.
a mess. Yeah. So, and then it also implies that the Federation is not nearly as accepting as it wants everybody to think.
And what it is like they're arguing from ignorance. They don't know what's going to happen because it happened this one time, 300 years ago. It will always happen that way, and we can never try it again. You know what I mean? It's just like, yeah, I mean, you're a scientist. You don't get the same results if you replicate everything exactly the same.
Yeah, man. It's tricky because we only see a fraction of what the story is out there. And man, I hate the slippery slope arguments. I always think that's an argument made from just
ignorance. It's weak.
Ignorance and just a bankrupt position, because that's not how the world works. It's never black or white. There's always shades of gray and in between stories. And this,
well, it's doubly bad because they're arguing from ignorance, and then they're banning it anyway. And so, like, even if you argue with them, well, because I said so, you can't do it.
And then it's weird in that they don't actually follow through on that. Apparently there's exceptions to be made for these all or nothing things because they let him stay on, which is, man, I don't get it.
I mean, just whenever they have dealt with absolutes, it's never worked for me. And like I said, biggest defender is the prime directive. But that's, thankfully that's something that DS9 rarely ever deals with, is the prime directive. Like, let's just pretend that doesn't exist.
Yeah. Well, apparently the take-home message is, let's forget and pretend this super important law we have doesn't exist either, because it's a slap on the wrist to the father, and then there's no repercussions.
Well, but the thing is that, I don't have necessarily a problem with that because I don't think it should exist. But, that's my personal viewpoint.
Well, yeah. I mean, ultimately, the ethicists and everything out there will argue that, and this is where I don't think there should be the slippery slope. People will argue that we shouldn't be doing this stuff. These people exist, that we shouldn't be doing this stuff to save the Tay-Sachs because it will lead to a con. And tailor-made babies, like, I want a blonde, so I'm going to make a blonde. Well, I'm
not advocating that we go full on Gattaca, but to say that it can never happen under any circumstances is just crazy to me.
Right. By the way, Matt just anticipated where my closing quote will come from this week. So, hey, let's wrap it up. We see Jules seeing off his parents off onto a sweet Nebula-class ship. None of that Jaeger garbage. Bashir says he'll probably visit his father because surely they have visiting days, and we, by the way, never see him go visit him. Yeah, go see his father, sure.
Well, I mean, his next 2 years are pretty busy.
Well, fair enough. And Jules thanks his father as he leaves. That's nice. And finally, Zimmerman is walking Lita to the ship too. They're leaving together. But they hear a very distant screaming Rom running to them. And he finally works up the lobes to tell her that he loves her. And she immediately says the same.
Yeah, it's because of this payoff that I don't mind some of the dunderheadedness of the B story.
Yeah, and the payoff is just that Doppler effect screaming, running. that I like. That was the final payoff that made the rest like almost pull out your hair, but you know where it goes in the end, so it's okay.
Right.
So again,
that's basically Rom's version of the end of The Graduate.
Yeah, well, this has a happy ending, unlike the incredibly depressing ending like clearly The Graduate ends on. You all know it's true.
Yeah, well, that's a debate for another day. But yeah, you're kind of right.
There is no debate. All right, see you in a minute. Anyhow, like I said, they confess their love, and Zimmerman is left hanging. But he immediately starts hitting on a new alien woman boarding the ship, talking about the Kama Sutra.
The Kama Sutra, which I heard that was ad-libbed by Robert Picardo, which, if that's true, that's awesome.
That did take his character to a whole new skeevy level where he never really was at. I mean, hitting on Lita in the interview was iffy, if we'll be nice. But oh man, Kama Sutra, that's like bad pickup lines on Aliens 101.
I thought that was funny.
It was, but it's just like, ooh, that guy is a creep.
Yeah, that's your opening line.
So, and to wrap it up, we go off to Quark's. Miles there makes the realization that Bashir had been tanking all this time playing darts. His abilities make him play much better. So Miles makes him play with his full abilities, where Bashir starts nailing bullseyes. And Miles is awesome, says he wants Bashir to play at full skill, but he has to throw from practically on the other side of the promenade.
Yeah,
as we cut to closing credits.
You talk about the things that the genetic enhancement does bad for the character. This is one of the things that I like. It's small, it's inconsequential, but this made me laugh, this last scene.
Yeah, this is what's the expression? Making rock soup or something. So I fully say this is a bad decision on the character, but once you've gone to that level, they make good moments from the overall bad decision. And this is some of that stuff. Yeah, it's cute friendship stuff. And I like that element.
Yeah. So I think that does it for the episode. So I'm very curious to see where we'll land. I think you're going to have more complex opinions than me. So I'm going to let you have the last word this week, Matt. For me, this is an episode that I think has a lot of problems, but for me, it's generally outweighed by the really good elements of it. There are good performances. Not the writing of the overall episode, but the writing of the character moments is on point. I don't mind the revelation as much as you do, but that's because I think they rightfully make better decisions, as you said, going forward than they did in this episode by introducing it. So, maybe that is a flaw of this episode, but I still enjoy the episode overall. I think it's a good showing for Bashir as a character. And, I like seeing Robert Picardo. He's the best part of Voyager, so having him in here doesn't hurt. I will give this one... I probably would normally give it a 3 from the flaws that we had, and I have a feeling that's probably the neighborhood that you're going to end up, although I could be wrong. But I'm going to be a little more generous and give it 3.25. It's the stuff that I like about it is far outweighs the stuff that I don't, but I recognize that this could have been done better. I totally accept that.
Yeah, it's a weird one, right? I mean, it's just a weird episode.
But
so,
like I said, I would never call this a bad one. Like, The Muse is a bad one. Let He Who Is Without Sin is a horrible one. This is just a flawed one that it's good, but could have been great.
Yeah, so that's interesting because, see, this is where it's so complex because I don't think it could be great given the pieces that they gave us, because I don't think it's ever would have worked making a character that we knew so long have such a radical change. I argue for the worst.
It depends on how you feel about that, of course, but I feel like there was something that could have been made better here. But
yeah, sure. So this is where there are super high highs, and I think the overarching important part of this stuff is like the character things. And I think when you look at it like that, that is really bad to me, really bad stuff. Ultimately, they do take those bad things and do the best that they can from it. But I don't think they should have ever put that character in this position to begin with. I think it was unfair, as much as these things, personifying a fake character as a real human, I think it was unfair to his character and the work, frankly, that Alexander Siddig put into making him from the worst character on the show in season 1 to, like Blair is pointing out, an MVP of the season. And to have that all kind of undercut, in my opinion, is a really bad thing for the character. But some of these concepts of touching on like visitor type themes of parents with their kids, that's good. That's damn good. And I liked a lot of that. But then when you kind of drill into that a little bit more, individual characters don't feel natural because you see the hand of the writer on this episode. So it is such a weird episode to me. So on the whole, I say it balances out because this is a critically important episode, obviously, for the overall importance of the show. So it's nothing you can miss. But man, it's so weird where I think it just kind of balances out to a 3 in the end. Like you said, that's probably where I'm going to sit on, because you can't give it a 2, because you get these awesome scenes of Bashir having like great heartbreaking moments and interacting with his mother. That's not fair.
Yeah,
but
2
I
to me
can't
is subpar, but 4 is like great, and it's not great.
Right. So it's just got to be that 3. It's like, I encourage everybody to watch it, but from a critical eye, but also keep your emotions open for like the Bashir talking to his parents and about his growing up and feeling that disappointment in him. That is so damn good.
It's really good.
But don't let that cloud you that, ooh, there's weird, bad parts to this too.
And so I have to admit, it did in the past, because I was so in it for those character moments. Now watching this with a critical eye, I absolutely see all the flaws that are here. But like you said, I can't recommend that someone on a rewatch skip this one. I never do.
And if you're watching it like for our show, or we have people writing in on Facebook messages or, the forums and stuff, if we had a separate rating scale for like dig your teeth into themes, execution, acting, this is a 5-star episode, because there's just so much here to kind of talk about and work through. It's great, but it's a weird episode.
It's odd. But you know what? The conversation I think we had was great, where I don't know if you were anticipating us falling on different sides of the spectrum, but like as we most often do, we've met in the middle somewhere.
Yeah, and it's fun to talk through this stuff and come to that middle road.
Yeah. So with that, we are going to go into our feedback section. And as always, thank you so much for writing in. We do love hearing from you, and there are a number of ways to get a hold of us. You can email us at up2podcast@gmail.com. You can leave a comment on our forums at forum.checkmatefamily.com. Follow us on Twitter at UP2podcast, and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/upperpylon2. Also, we want to thank you for 5-star iTunes reviews that help get the word out there about the show. We want to, these conversations that we have, we sometimes disagree. We sometimes have very complex thoughts, and sometimes we meet in the middle. So it'll be great to hear from you, to see if we're doing it in an entertaining way, and we really appreciate hearing back from you. You can also reach us personally on Twitter. I am at mhansen0207, HANSEN, talking about all things nerdy, Star Trek, Star Wars, Marvel. Probably talk a lot about Discovery over the next month. May not tweet there as often because I start school again tomorrow, but you can generally find me there, and I'll make time to talk to people.
And I can be found at ProSub0, where, my God, I just found out that they're playing old episodes of American Gladiators on a really crappy network charge. Oh, it's so great.
From the 90s?
Absolutely, the original. There was a dude on there named Purple Rundy.
Yes, I remember.
You do? I encourage.
I watched that show when I was a kid.
I did too, but I don't remember Purple Rundy. So everybody, check out my Twitter and the UP2, where I retweeted my own thing. Check out Purple Rundy. Oh, so awesome.
And of course, you can reach our other co-hosts. Blair is at Medic1849, and Chris is at Carnivore J. So thank you for joining us on this very interesting discussion on Dr. Bashir, I presume. Next week, we get one of those episodes that I literally remember nothing about, and it's usually not a good thing. All I remember is that Odo falls in love with some random bland chick in a simple investigation.
I'm Matt in Buffalo, and there's more vodka in this piss than there is piss.
I'm Matt from Arizona. Closing hailing frequencies. Docking clamps are open, and you are cleared for departure.